Hey everybody, welcome back. Hope your day was a great one, and I'm really excited to present Suzanne Robinson for two reasons. First of all, she's here. Second of all, she's on the Bay Area Council, and welcome.
Thank you. Thanks, Zinni. Thanks so much for having me. And thank you for this great channel that really keeps Oaklanders, especially, informed about what's going on in our city, kind of at a very deep level, in my opinion. So thank you so much for having me. As I mentioned, I'm a big fan of your channel,
Oh,
and
thank you.
I do get a lot of value out of watching your content. So thank you.
Okay, so now I'm putting your hands. Whatever you want, no problem. Hey, so you did a forum earlier.
I did, yeah, I did.
Tell us about it.
Yeah, so we did a forum at the LGBTQ plus community center, also sponsored by the Cultural District, I think, and it was great. What an amazing community, honestly. The vibe there is just so healing. There's so many people there that are spending so much of their time in the trenches. I mean, even just the questions and the respect they gave to all of us, the whole process was from top to bottom amazing. It's just an amazing community. The LGBTQ plus cultural center in Oakland is really the heart of our community, the LGBTQ plus community. And I think that when you think about the fact that they just started in 2017, I think that's when they first got started, and
Yep.
how far they've
Yep.
come to becoming like an incredibly important part of Oakland's culture and community. They're really, really passionate about health and wellness. They work with Alameda County. So I just wanted to give them a little shout out, and encourage people, hey, it would be great to donate to them, help them out, volunteer there if you can, because they're doing some incredible work there, I
Yeah, and I
think.
remember when they got vandalized too, which was really a terrible thing.
Yeah.
We need to sustain them because we have some crazies around uh,
Yeah.
from time to time, especially nowadays. Um, so, hey, tell us, who is Suzanne Robinson?
That's a big question, Zinni. A very big question. And it's always hard to answer questions like that. As you mentioned, I work at the Bay Area Council. It's been a big part of my life. I started there in 2009. It's one of the best places I've ever worked. I think what's really unique about the organization is it has a legitimately flat culture, and I think that's very unique because a lot of companies and organizations try to have a flat culture and they're not really that successful at it. And I've really learned the value of that at the Bay Area Council, how you can actually create leaders inside an organization like this if you give them freedom, if you treat them like they matter, because they actually do matter. And everyone who works at the organization has a voice. We are all leaders there, and from top to bottom, there is no top and bottom. And I think that it's one of the key reasons the organization gets such incredible results. It's one of the best business organizations in the state of California, if not the United States of America. And I do attribute it to the culture, the environment, and the hard work that's been invested in creating a culture where every employee is a leader and they have autonomy to lead their work, their division, whatever they're doing, and their voice really matters in the decision making, and it's just made a huge difference. So I've been there since '09, and we do a lot of work on all the issues that Oakland's facing. In fact, the Bay Area Council right now has a public safety initiative that is kind of focused on Oakland, since people asked us to kind of work on it. So before that, my journey is an interesting one because I came to the Bay Area to heal myself. And I learned after college that, there's no greater school than the school of life. I came here and just started to explore all the modalities in the Bay Area that I just think are so incredible: massage therapy, Reiki, meditation, every counseling, every aspect. And I found this place to be such a place of healing with so many different things that helped me become the person I am. So I have a real affinity to that environment. And I think when you ask me, who are you? I think at my core, foundation is this foundation of healing. And I really kind of like bring that into everything, including the way I see the city of Oakland right now, because I think that our city is not well. I think it's broken on the inside. I think that our public safety is broken on the inside. And I think I just have the ability to see deeply what is broken because I have spent so much time exploring what is under the surface, what is really going on. And I remember when I first came here, I would go to these like at that time there was this new age spirituality thing, and I would go to these like convention centers. I was just hungry to learn anything that helped me. And I would meet some people. Sometimes you'd meet people that were legitimate, and sometimes you would meet people that were kind of con artists, to be honest. You know, they were there to sell their stuff, but there wasn't much substance. So I learned very quickly, like in the pursuit of knowledge, how to get under the surface and understand who's got the information you need and where, and some people, nothing's there for you, you know? And I think it's that journey, you know, like it's that deeper journey that you take where you're like, you really realize how to sort things out, I guess, right? So, yeah, so that's a little bit about me.
You said something that caught me, and I have to
Yeah.
ask. You said you were healing. What
Yeah.
what happened?
You know, I don't know if I want to go into it a lot. A lot of personal things that I had to kind of overcome from my childhood, my background. I think at the end of the day, a lot of people have to go on a healing quest when you leave your family and you leave college. You're trying to figure out who you are, and then if there's trauma in your past or trauma in certain areas of your life, kind of have to sort that out, you know. And I think that's what my journey really was at that time. And the Bay Area and Oakland was such an exciting place to be because so many things are happening here, you know, like this is the epicenter of where a lot of things kind of permeate from. And I think that's what's so cool about Oakland and San Francisco. Our whole region really permeates with this kind of like innovation, problem solving, healing, solutions. And I do think that a lot of movements have come from here because of that, you know?
I have to ask, did what you went through and how you came out of it, do you feel it was something that prepped you to be a leader, to run a city?
Yeah, I do. I think in some ways my journey's led me up to this point, you know, because I have explored every modality, you know, like for example, I worked for a nonprofit organization for 2 years while I was doing all of this in animal welfare. I was surrounded by vegans and vegetarians, and I became a vegetarian. And it was just a great time. And then, you know, I kept hearing in this organization that like corporations were evil and they were responsible for all the problems in the world, and they were the reason the world sucked. And at a certain point, I thought to myself, I want to find out if that's real.
Hmm.
So eventually, I left the organization and went and worked for a Fortune 16 company in the top tier of a multi-billion-dollar sales department. And I did it intentionally because I wanted to find out what's really going on inside this corporation. You know what I mean? Like, are corporations evil? Are they not? Like, what's the real thing? And that's something that I
But let's
learned
not forget
when I
something. They
was,
hired you too, right? It wasn't like you just sort of
yeah,
walked in and said,
yeah.
"Hey, I got a
And
$1 billion. I'll just buy my way in," right? You got
but it's
hired.
something that I
That's pretty
learned when
good.
I was exploring all these spiritual modalities. I learned to ask those questions, you know, like what's really going on here? What is the truth? What is real? And what I found out in this quest was that reality is about your own personal experience of something. And
Yep.
someone can tell you something, but if you don't go experience that and understand it for yourself, you're going to find maybe something different there, right?
Yep.
So I was hearing all these things and I wanted to know if it was true. And so I went and worked there. And what I found out at the time, and companies have actually changed a lot since then, because this was at the advent of corporate social responsibility was just becoming a thing. And so when I was there, I learned that companies were not evil. However, they did have some problems, when it came to consciousness and when it came to like a lot of things that actually companies are more focused on today. For example, this was a healthcare company, and they sold items related to specialty, which is a category with people who are kind of dying of cancer. And this is their last hope, is to try something experimental that might actually end up saving their lives. So I remember being in a meeting, and I remember hearing people talking about, they just launched right into the numbers, like, here's the financials, and this is what's going on, and this is that. And I was sitting there thinking to myself, you could start this meeting by bringing consciousness into the room, and you could just say, hey, thanks for being here, everyone. It's great that we're doing this because so many people count on the work that we're doing. And I think that little thing would have connected people more to what we're doing, more to the people that were receiving the product, and kind of thread that consciousness through the work, which makes the work more meaningful to employees. And a lot of times you get a better outcome from that, because people will work harder for a company, even if it's product based, if they feel like there's a mission and a purpose, because kind of that's what people really like, that's what kind of feeds and motivates. So that was one of the issues I found with the company. I found that, like, I found a lot of good things too. A large company gives you access to training and education and modalities. You get to travel, and you get to go to you have to have these different experiences. And there's so many great things that you learn about leadership. And there's so many great things. I learned some things in the sales department, for example, that I sort of apply sometimes to how I think about Oakland, which is, we had all these customers that would come in, huge customers, huge customers, huge accounts. And they would come in, and it was like the favorite customers were the ones that did not know how to negotiate at all. And they had the worst deal, and they didn't even know it. There's one retailer that's still around today that had the worst contract with us, and they didn't even know it. They were perfectly happy. And because they didn't know how to negotiate a good deal for themselves, right? And we had this other customer who would come in, and they would have like a stack of paper like this. And the guy would just be like, boop, he'd flip right to the pricing metrics and start drilling down. He was like a stone cold businessman,
Mhm.
and he got a great deal. And so I learned from that experience that you get the deal you negotiate. And if you go into a room and rubber stamp stuff, which is what I feel like sometimes Oakland does, is they just rubber stamp all this stuff, you're not going to get a good deal. You're going to end up being the favorite customer because you got the worst deal of anyone else. Right? So I learned a lot of great things working there. I worked there for about 5 years. And then I think I just learned what I needed to learn there, and I took off and I did an expedition rafting trip. I do whitewater rafting as a volunteer guide. So I've
Yeah.
done a lot of wilderness expedition trips, a lot of big whitewater,
My friend
scary big
from high
whitewater.
school, Bill Boyd, does that.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, he's heavy. He and his wife now. He's got his kids into it and everything else. So yeah, so
That's
definitely.
cool.
Hey, curious. You wrote something also that led me to pull it up because you wrote, as a candidate, I believe this election is critical for Oakland's future and it is vital that all voices, especially those brave enough to step into the ring, are heard. My campaign has been driven by the urgent concerns of my community, particularly regarding escalating crime and violence. Recently, a family owned neighborhood store in our area was devastated after being smashed into by a stolen car during a robbery. This is just one example of the issues we're facing, from gun battles on our streets to a surge in stolen vehicles, stripped cars, and the fear that has taken root in our neighborhoods. My community is upset and scared, and they have nominated me to step forward because they want change. They want a city that protects them, that listens to their concerns, and that takes decisive action. I'll be incredibly grateful for the chance to speak on your platform and share the voices of Oaklanders, which is what you're doing. uh, and I've invited you to become a vlogger as well, and who are suffering due to the inaction of crime and violence. This is a pivotal moment for Oakland, and I would love the opportunity to present those who feel unheard. So I have to ask you, who nominated you?
Yeah, well, 75 members of my neighbors, my community. You know, I'm in East Oakland. I'm over, by Mills College.
Hmm.
And it's just sort of, I think in Oakland, we have the city and then we have our communities within that city. And it's kind of a domino effect when things happen in your neighborhoods, your community, because it affects everybody. We don't have a ton of stores here. Actually, that's a problem we have in our area. And so the one that we do have is like everybody meets everybody there. It's the store everybody knows about. And when something like that, a family owned business that we all kind of know, we all talk to them, they're always in the store, right? When a family owns a store, they're always in there working because that's kind of how it is with a small business. So it's just the kind of thing that impacts everybody. It has a domino effect. And I think the same can be said. Our My street was targeted for auto theft. At one point, everybody was getting their car stolen. And when you hear that in Oakland, people, it's just become so normal that it doesn't really explain how traumatic that is to people to have your car stolen right in front of your house. There's a whole thing that happens spiritually where it's like you become afraid to live in your house, you become insecure. It impacts the whole neighborhood. Everybody else is like, whoa, somebody got their car stolen right next to us. And it just creates this domino effect. And sometimes when I drive around, I see people with bars on their windows. Everybody's got cameras everywhere. And it's like, it's creating kind of a prison, like we're imprisoning ourselves because of this public safety crisis. And I think it's devastating to our communities. And I don't think that telling someone your car stolen really explains the deeper kind of experience of what happens when you actually go through that.
Yeah, especially if you had plans for that day and which involve using the car to go anywhere. Next, then all of a sudden, literally short circuited. To
Yeah,
say,
no one's really empathetic because the other thing is you don't get a lot of hugs and a lot of like care about that because everybody's getting their car stolen here. And so it's like it has this effect on people that they don't really get the support when it happens to you. And when you get your entire block targeted and it's happening to everyone, it becomes a thing. And you start to feel very insecure. The same thing we've had, we had a moment where people were dumping stripped cars repeatedly on our block.
hmm,
And it was very dramatic for everyone. Neighbors were knocking on people's doors and they're like, whoa, people started freaking out kind of. And it's like, it has an effect on people's mental health, spirit. It has an effect beyond just stripped cars being dumped. And it's like, I think that has to be brought more into the conversation about the impact to people's wellness when you're in the middle of this type of a crisis.
no, I mean, I think you're absolutely right. And one thing that I've noticed over at the time is the number of people I've talked to, both on this show and just when bipping was becoming a thing in 2019, because that happened to me, um, is how the conversation about what happens sets the tone for how the city is and what you expect. And so your expectations are suddenly how do you defend something rather than how do you get rid of it? Because one thing you're used to is, hey, the police aren't coming. And the police aren't coming unless you were physically harmed. And then maybe
Yeah,
you see them, right?
right, right.
And it wasn't always, I can remember a time not too long ago prior to the pandemic when that wasn't the case. I mean, sure, it didn't come a lot, was used to have to wait for them, but, 10 minutes, you know, back in
Yeah.
2019, 2017 when yeah. But, um, okay,
Yeah,
so,
safety is an experience too. Like you experience a sense of safety until it's taken away from you. And then you have to kind of work hard to get that sense of safety back again. And I think our communities are really experiencing that. People can become very isolated too, very locked in to their properties and their homes. And like, it creates a whole thing in our communities in Oakland that I think we really, it's hard to watch that. It's hard to be in it and experience it and live it. And it's hard to see other people go through it too, because sometimes when you see other people go through it, it hurts you even more than your own experience of it, right?
How do you fix it, Ms. Mayor?
Yeah, well, I talked a lot about it at this at the LGBTQ plus forum that I just came out of, and it's like I think fundamentally there are several things going on with public safety, but at the root core of what's going on is that the culture within our police department has collapsed, and it's like I was at a recent police commission meeting, and our police chief was brave enough, courageous enough to step in the ring on camera in front of the commission and say, look, in my 30 years of experience, I have never seen a culture like this, a department like this. And he just straight up said that our police officers are not doing their jobs. They're scared to do their jobs. They're afraid of making mistakes. So there is a real collapse within our police department. And to me, having worked for so many companies and organizations, and having done so much work on what's really going on here, that's always my question is like, what's actually really going on here at the deepest level? And when I ask that question and follow it down to the roots, what I see is that our public safety's collapsed on the inside. And you have to understand, like, if we have a toxic work environment, we've got these officers coming out of like, they're just getting out of academy, they're starting their job, they're excited to work, and they're ending up in a toxic work environment with fear everywhere. Managers are probably afraid. And it's like, I don't think people are going to stay working in that. You know what I mean? I
Yeah,
mean,
right.
if the more life experience you get, I've experienced that. I didn't stay working for that place, like people aren't going to stay working in a toxic work environment. So this issue is going to make it very hard for us to recruit police officers. It's going to make it very hard for us to retain officers. And we're in the middle of a public safety crisis, and our police chief is straight up telling us the officers aren't doing their jobs. This is a major
Wow.
problem, and I cannot
And that's the
understate what a
police chief.
problem this is.
That's the
It's the
police.
police chief, the
Yeah.
police chief, and it can't be
That's not a
understated.
blogger. That's a police chief.
Right, right. So it just can't be understated how serious this is.
Marcus
And
Bailey, he says that he comments the military needs to be brought in. What about that? Thank you for the comment, Marcus. I don't know Marcus, but I know him now.
yeah, I think that Oakland has seen almost an immediate change in public safety when the CHP was deployed here by the governor. Our public safety, we almost felt an immediate shift.
Hmm.
And so the question is whether or not the question is the impact of our police officers doing their jobs, right? If we have a police force of 640 officers who are not doing their jobs, what would be the impact of public safety if they started doing their jobs? I mean, what's the impact to that?
Mm-hmm.
And it could be a very significant impact. And so, the cultural problem has to be solved. And it's not, by the way, it's never the employee's fault, the sort of like boots on the ground employees. It's never their fault that the culture is toxic and screwed up. It's always a people management problem,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a problem of the systems that manage the department. It's
No.
not the employees that create the culture of an organization. So we really have to hold the people managers and the systems that are managing OPD accountable for this. And instead of having these systems either not do anything, they defer everything, we have to start putting a lot of pressure on them to solve this,
Yeah.
shine a light on it, light a fire under them, hold them accountable with the public, and put pressure on them to be responsible for the culture of the department. They are responsible for this. This is their creation. They created this culture, and now they need to repair the culture. I don't know about the military being brought in, Zinni. I think people in Oakland would freak out, honestly.
Okay.
I've been all over the
That was
city.
Marcus's idea, not mine.
I know, and I've been all over the city, and you know,
That was also Jerry Brown's idea at one point.
yeah, I've been all over the city, and some people, when you try to talk to them about the police, you don't even get past the word police and they start getting angry, So we
Yeah.
have a problem that I talked about earlier in the forum in Oakland where we have this pendulum that's constantly swinging. It's like we go from getting rid of all the police to oh my God, we have a crisis, we need police. And we have a lot. Again, I bring this back to my healing roots. We have something here that we have to heal in our community,
Mm-hmm.
and we have to get people past their triggers because they get very triggered by this. They're like, police, ah. So we have to move past that trigger point, and we have to get underneath that to the roots of this, and we have to work together to figure out, like, how do we change this? How do we heal our community? Because we can't keep having different special interest factions pressuring us one way or another and kind of fracturing the whole approach to public safety in Oakland. And I think when you talk to people that are triggered by the police, they have actually, if you can move this out of the way, they actually have some interesting things to say about policing. They actually want people not just that have combat training, but that have the skill set to interface with our unique community, to de-escalate, to work on with people who have mental health issues sometimes. So their concern is about the militaristic training of the police. So if you bring in the police, I think there's a faction in Oakland that's going to freak out. I'm sure of it. And then on the other side, we have this whole issue of accountability, and we have people who are committing crimes that are not taking responsibility. We're not holding them accountable for it. I mean, you can't show up and be a victim when you're harming innocent people. It's like, I understand that some of the reasons are that they have been traumatized and victimized. But once you make that leap into victim to perpetrator, and now you are hurting our community, you're hurting innocent people. We have a situation where we have to manage people's behavior and not allow them to use the victim card to get out of taking responsibility for that behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to say, having worked with recovery clients before, this is an essential part of the 12-step program. I mean, you can't get well if you don't take accountability for your actions.
Mm-hmm.
It has to be a fundamental centerpiece of our policing here.
I notice everyone talks about policing, and I don't hear anyone talking about economic development.
Yeah, right.
I'm just asking, what's up?
The problem is that we can't get our businesses back if we don't solve public safety. I mean, we're watching our major stakeholders in Oakland grow next door to us because their employees don't want to work here anymore.
Mm-hmm.
We saw Steph Curry's wife, Maisha Curry,
Right.
close down her store.
Right.
It's because the employees don't want to work here. They're scared to work here. It's the same thing I was talking about earlier with our communities not feeling safe. So the reason why everyone's talking about public safety is because businesses won't come back to this city if we don't fix this. And we can't wait. The other thing is like, we can't wait around for 2 years for some drawn out process for them to start fixing the problems in the city. Like, we have to light a fire under their whats, and we have to move like fast because our businesses are collapsing here.
Here's a fascinating dynamic in this discussion. A lot of the time, and this goes back to when we first got into this mess I call not having a pandemic response.
Yeah.
No one talked about the fact that when you push people out of the businesses, you say, hey, close your business. There's no one there to do any maintenance. And eventually the whole block begins to look like a pigsty. And there are pipes that burst and everything else that happens in the leasehold that don't get fixed in a timely fashion because there's nobody there to see it. And then, of course, you have vandals. What I'm getting at is that it seems to me, and I'm happy to be wrong, but I'm just making an observation, that we didn't have a look And what we did, we stopped doing economic development. And we used to have additional security in the downtown, just to name one example, which should have been in the business improvement districts. My point is, even if I clean up the crime problem, and this is me saying this, and I want your response to it. How do I get people back? How do you get out the message and then hope they come back in a timely fashion to the point where people spend enough money, right, to make that business a going concern, keep it there in a world, which reminds me of those trailers of the music where the guy would say, in a world where we have online purchasing, where I don't have to go there to buy what I need, which is an extra problem, right? How do I make it attractive if there's no business, if, a basic tenet of economic development, which I learned and was an intern in Oakland and worked for a couple of mayors and all that. We did something called business attraction. Reel them in, right? But it's also attracting people to go into the business. So I'm saying Suzanne, there's a systemic way that cities operate that has been thrown out with this. Let's just do the crime and do the crime, do the crime, do the crime. And I get it, right? And I organically, I don't normally have a conversation with a candidate like this, but I do adjust for the situations. And what I mean by that is that I find this happening in the conversations again and again and again, where it's just crime. I'm thinking, okay, fine. So we fixed the crime, but we haven't fixed how. Maybe we put it this way, a very simple way. We established redevelopment. California did 1947 to get rid of blight. Jerry got rid of it in 2011. The replacement for it, which is marked by the legislation called Enhanced Infrastructure Financing District Legislation, SB 293, Skinner for Howard Terminal, SB 628B, which is the daddy of them all. We haven't used it, right? So, okay, great. We clean up all this. Great. Why is it that people think that's just going to solve the problem when in so many instances it really doesn't?
Yeah, it's not going to solve the problems any. I'll tell you something. Before the pandemic, we were on fire here with businesses that wanted to come to Oakland. Oakland was the place to be, it was the best. And I think the problem that we have in Oakland, and we're not the only city having this problem right now, is that we've never had to fight that hard for business here. The reality is that the Bay Area for the last, I don't know, 10 years maybe or more has had a pretty good economy here. And the office buildings were full up. Oakland was getting overflow from other places.
Mhm.
And I talked to a politician a lot before the pandemic. I remember this conversation so well, because in the process of all these businesses coming, wanting to be here, what happened is that governments created more and more anti-business policies because they realized, oh, we're the hottest game in town. We can tax you, we can give you fees, we can do anything we want and collect all this money, and you're going to do it anyways because you don't have a choice. So there was a lot of grumbling from the business
Bingo.
community.
Sorry about
Yeah, so the business community has always been very sour about this, that they have to just take it and they keep. Well, unfortunately, and the story I wanted to tell you was that, this was brought up to a politician, I won't say who, and the politician answered the question and they were like, well, aren't you afraid of businesses leaving with these new like this unfriendly taxes you're implementing? And the politician was like, well, don't let the door hit you on the way out. We've got plenty of businesses lined up to take their place.
I know precisely who said that. It was
and
not.
and that
It
was
wasn't a
the
smart.
attitude.
Right.
That was the attitude at the time of many politicians, right? Don't let the door hit you on the way out. And the problem that we have now in 2025 is that we live now in an upside down world. Businesses are not lined up to be here. Everybody's got empty office buildings everywhere. We're in the worst commercial real estate crisis in history. And many of these cities, like Oakland, have no clue what to do because they have never had to do this before. They've
Right.
never had to go out and pound the pavement and do business development. I mean, you and I talked earlier, like Oakland doesn't even have a business plan, and they haven't had a business plan for 5 years, and they don't care because they don't think like this, Cindy.
No.
They really don't have a business mind at the top of the city.
Nope.
They don't
And
think
you're
like,
talking to a guy whose first job, it
right,
was my first job as an Oakland redevelopment agency intern,
right.
right? Trying to help Ezra build big box retail. Ezra, poor rest in peace. Yeah, I mean
Yeah.
that's what I
So
was
we're
dealing
dealing with a
with. Like
city that
city has just
literally
forgotten. It's
doesn't
like
know.
what is that?
Yeah,
It's just
we're in a
crazy.
completely different world, and our city doesn't seem to know what to do. And this is a terrible situation because what happens is they're not doing anything, and then we're sliding into bankruptcy, and their solution is to tax everyone in Oakland. And this is a terrible strategy to deal with revenue problems, to not have a business plan and a revenue growth plan, and what you're talking about, a tax finance district plan, which I've seen that model too. Even in the downtown districts, people are talking about that. And it's like, and they don't have really a plan, and now their plan is to tax everyone, and everyone's already taxed to the maximum in Oakland. And
Yep.
so this is a terrible situation, and it's like they just asked me at the LGBTQ forum, like, well, what do you think about this business tax? And I had to be honest with them, Zinni, like, I hate the business tax or the sales tax, like, I hate the tax. But unfortunately, it's one of those things where you have to endorse it, because if we don't have that tax, we're not going to be able to get our public safety back in Oakland. If we don't get that back, we can't get our business revenue side back. So we're in a catch 22 right now, where we have to raise some revenue in order to get our city safe again so we can attract businesses,
I have to ask you. I hate to do this. Why are you married to that idea? That
The
that's
reason
that's 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 the, that's those are the only choices.
I don't know that they're the only choices, but
Good.
I do know that we're facing, I think, $120 million debt, or something, $120 million gap. We have a massive gap that we're facing,
Mhm.
and I think that we are on a contingency budget now. I understand that the Coliseum sale potentially will. I understand there's other money that might come through to the city, but well, look, I hear what you're saying, Zinni, which is why I don't like the sales tax, but I do think the city is facing tremendous financial problems, and I think it's going to take a few years to get the economy back in Oakland.
Here's what I'm getting at, and I'm just going to throw this in because I'm 62 and I've been around long enough to remember a different time, right? But unfortunately, a different time is still on the books, and this is just a matter of because this is something I hear almost from every candidate, and it's alarming. Uh, when we used redevelopment law, and we really have it still again, it's just in a streamlined form, which really should have been another story. We would bill or have the city employees bill from our tax increment financing revenue rather than the general fund. So guess what? We didn't have that problem anywhere near as much as today. See what I'm getting at? Because the Coliseum redevelopment area, in part, which incorporates in part where you live now, was almost 7,000 acres. Downtown was basically 4 times the size of Disneyland. West Oakland was entirely West Oakland, and even though we didn't use tax increment financing to its full potential, I mean, look, let me put it in perspective. Some cities over the history of development in California, okay, like Santa Ana, made their entire city a redevelopment area. Now, what does that mean? It means that instead of taking the dollar property tax that I might spend, I got over all my dollars today, so I'll just say dollar, okay? But all right, then I might spend that $1 in Oakland goes from 17% to the city, 27% to the county, the majority to the school district, BART, and the AC Transit, and then the EB Mud Flood Control District. Those are called the taxing agencies. But under redevelopment, they don't see that money. The redevelopment organization is the agency. We used to call it, and now it's called the Public Financing Authority under the new law. Point is, who controls the Public Financing Authority? The city does, which means it has control. And the neat thing about the legislation is that it said, unlike the old one, that money can be used. Let's say if it only comes from a 55-acre parcel like Howard Terminal, but that money can be used for a county-wide purpose. Any project that's deemed for a county-wide purpose, could be anything, and we don't use it. And what bothers me is that we have Empower Oakland, we have this guy that puts out the Oakland Report. They're all singing the same song of the layperson that doesn't actually look at the legislation and say, hey, look, or ask people like me who've been around for a while. So we get frustrated. We start talking, out of turn in conversations, but it is a frustration because it's more than
Yeah.
that. And that, you see what I'm getting at?
Yeah, I hear you, Zinni, and I want to
Every
say I
candidate
think
does
it
it.
should
Everyone.
I think it absolutely should be in the plan, like I think first of all, we need a business plan, a business competitiveness plan, I think, because we're competing with all these cities. We have 100 cities in the Bay Area. Many are having the same crisis. And we are now
That's a
competing for
great idea.
business.
That's a
I
great
mean,
idea.
we are competing for business against each other. It's another thing that's not in the DNA of Oakland to understand. We are now in competition with these cities. And so look, I definitely absolutely agree with you. I think it has to be in the plan, but I do think that
Oh, by the way,
this
you said something. You said it wasn't in our DNA, but you're talking to the guy that literally ripped Cirque du Soleil out from San Francisco's belly in
but that was
1996.
in the 90s, right? I mean, it seems
I'm
like there
still
was this,
alive.
and everyone
Oh,
says, wasn't
right?
that under Jerry Brown? Everyone says
No, it
Jerry
wasn't under
Brown was
Jerry
like the
Brown.
last great.
That wasn't Jerry Brown. That was Elihu.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Okay.
that was
So
my
that was cool.
boss. The Elihu
Look,
let
you
Elihu
are
let me go.
100%.
Yeah.
You're 100% right, Zinni. I mean, I think it should be in the business plan. I think what people don't understand is the magnitude of the collapse in Oakland and other cities. San Francisco has a collapse too. And, when you talk to real estate developers, which I've talked to many, we're not done with this yet. Okay. I mean, what's happening is, people, when they sign up for an office lease, they sign up for like a 5 to 7 year lease. So these leases are coming up and people are letting go of them or they're shrinking down their footprints. So it's been a very slow collapse of the commercial real estate, and it's not done yet. We're not done with this yet, and the people in the industry are saying it's going to get worse, and then like that we still have more to come.
Mm-hmm.
And I've heard the estimates of the jobs that have been lost in Oakland and the businesses that have been lost in Oakland. It's staggering. It's a staggering loss. It's a very severe economic hit to this city. And again, people in the industry call it the second Great Depression of real estate happening, and we're not getting any help from above here. Like the stimulus is over. That got us through the 0809 crisis. And that's how we were. And they also did things working with the banking institutions at that time and other things to get us through that depression. We're in a similar state right now, and we're just not getting the support we got during that time. So the situation is very dire. And I'm not saying that what you're suggesting isn't good. I mean, absolutely. I have actually seen that on like different suggestions for proposals of the business plan for the city. So what you're saying is absolutely true, but in terms of like, is it going to fix the problem? It's like I think we have to crawl our way out of this by.
Let me give an example though, because I don't mean to interrupt you, but I have to say, we say, all right, we were trying to get Howard Terminal ballpark. I think you're involved in that. The project manager on that and the city administrator basically didn't have, even though I'm the person who said to Dave Cobble that you need to use tax increment financing. We had this conversation April 4th, 2017 at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Dave will tell you he got that from me, and I wrote about it because he said, I said, you're going to have to build affordable housing to him. I said that on the phone. And I said, you can use taxing your funding. He goes, public money isn't available. I said, yes, it is. He didn't know the legislation. I showed it to him. Then I showed him taxing or finance calculations already made. He teamed with Nancy Skinner and Libby, and they created SB 293 Skinner. Rather than using the existing law, they created a designer law, SB 293 Skinner. Cut to the chase, long story short. They hired Century Urban. Century Urban made 3 different errors in their calculations, came up with an $800 million revenue. It should have been $1.6 billion, okay? Now, I'm trying to tell Lauren this, and I'm saying this just like it happened on live stream, in the middle of the discussion for the term sheet. And I said, Lauren, they didn't do the calculation right. I have done 100 calculations. Well, okay, 300 calculations in my life on this. I do them in my sleep. Lauren says, well, I believe the consultant. I said, the consultant has 8 years of experience. I have 37. Why are you going to believe them? He says, well, because they're the consultant. Okay. So I publish all the errors and everything. So guess what I found? April 4th, April 3rd, 21 of 2023. Buried in a database of The Athletic, a sports organization publication. A draft infrastructure financing plan for Howard Terminal by Century Urban. They totally redid their calculations. Why did they do them the wrong way the first time? Because here's why. This is what these did, okay, Suzanne? We had then a $53 million bond debt from downtown. They said, well, we can't float bonds until those are paid off. Excuse me. Did you actually bother to do the full calculations or figure out in your area, which is separate from downtown? I'm talking about a 55-acre area that's really outside the downtown map. They thought it was inside the map to begin with. They didn't read the map. A. Okay. B. These bozos, I'm saying it just like that because it really pisses me off, okay, didn't think that, hey, look, if I do calculations at 4% base year assessed value rate of growth over a 45-year bonding period instead of the 20 years they used. They took 20 years off the calculation. And then they didn't do the calculation to match the years when they would be implemented. They just picked a straw person like 2020. I said, wait a minute, 2020 is over here. Why are you using something in the past rather than, the future? That's how it's normally done. I wrote about all this stuff. Okay. I wrote about all this. Okay.
So let me ask you this, Cindy. Do you think that's the pivotal reason?
Here's my point. Okay. Because it's one that has to be noted. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you realize that when they redid the calculations, they came up with a $2.5 billion revenue? Billion. So when you say,
wow,
yeah, that's money that we could have gotten right now, Suzanne. You see why I get upset about it?
I see why you get upset about it. I mean, I think it's definitely worth looking into. Like I said, I've definitely seen that as an aspect of a plan, like an element of a plan. And especially, I think it can be done in the downtown district, right? Because we have some of these old office buildings and stuff.
Well, here's the thing. You're talking about, like, let's say Howard Terminal with the port. It's a 55-acre plot of land. But you can use the revenue from that all around the city. So it doesn't matter where you do it. I gave a presentation at the Coliseum about this. It doesn't matter where you do it, okay, at all.
Yeah.
Okay? It doesn't matter where you do it. But what I'm saying is that, I think she went out. Hello?
Me? I'm still here. Are you there?
Oh, yeah, your camera went out. Yeah.
Sorry.
But I'm saying it doesn't matter where you do it, okay, at all. It doesn't matter where you do it. But there are cities that have done it. There are only 8 in California. The trouble is that because Jerry decimated this program, and I want to stop here because not stop our conversation, but what I want to stop is because I have a question regarding how you're wanting about the mayor's office. All right. But my point is that it's a whole carafe of
I think we
knowledge.
should go after it, Zinni. I'm in favor of a solid revenue plan that gets the city out of crisis and moves us ahead like lightning speed. I've seen these tax increment and districts done for sports stadiums deals a lot. I think that's the go-to model for these stadium deals.
But it doesn't have to be.
So, no, like I said, I know I have seen them as like proposals for a business plan for the city is like in the downtown district where these empty office buildings are. So it's an incredibly innovative idea that we should pursue to the nth degree and do the financial calculations on it. And it's like anything that makes sense, that is solid, that we can utilize to get this economy back in this city is number one, like we have to do it. And we have to do it fast because it's a problem in Oakland. It takes so long to do anything in this city. It's crazy. I mean, imagine if you try to run a business like this city. Can you imagine taking 5 years to get a business plan and you don't even have the plan yet? And in the meantime, like everything's collapsing around you. I mean, it would never happen in the business world. So why does our government operate this way? I think we have to take advantage of this crisis to ask these questions. Because if we ask the right questions, then that's going to direct us to the right solutions.
Mhm.
But if we just run around trying to solve all these problems like chickens with our heads cut off, we're not going to get to the meat of what in the world is going on here. You know what I mean? It's like
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and
it's taking years to make decisions and it's like it's crazy. I'm just
yeah.
going to say it. It's just crazy.
Oh, and by the way, since I used amount of time to go on that, well, I think it's important. We'll just come on and do another show. Uh,
Sure.
but I was going to ask also, as we kind of work to the next 10 minutes, uh, what kind of office are you going to have? What I mean is, are you going to have some people have a lot of people they hire, others don't. Have you given thought to how your office will be structured?
Yeah, a little bit of thought, I mean, I like to have a lean team, I'm not a fan of bloated bureaucracy. You get too many people, too much cross wires. I'm used to working on a lean team, that's where I work in my day job. So we run a lean operation. We have very little administration. We have and we've been accused of having too little administration sometimes there. So I'm fond of that model. I think the city model has too much administration and too much complications that cause it to move slower. So I think it's always better to start out lean and then build if necessary, start out lean and then build the team as you go along when you figure out, hey, we need to add headcount here. But especially during a budget crisis, if you're going to lead this city, you need to model the structure you want in the city in your office, right? So if you want this city to lean up and get rid of administrative bloat, you need to lean up and get rid of administrative bloat right from the gate to model the behavior you expect from everyone, right? So that's kind of how I look at it on the staffing side. Yeah.
Awesome. And how do people get in contact with you to find more about your campaign and how they can help you?
Yeah. Well, my email address is SUZIROBINSON
S
at
U Z I R O.
ROBINSON
I have
at
it.
iCloud.com. You can find me there and I'll get back to you. Shoot me an email. I love to talk to people. You learn a lot talking from people here. This city is incredible. It's like so many people have said this, and I know why they say it. It's like if we could just get the right leader in Oakland, this city is untapped. Like we have so much potential here. Even just going to the LGBTQ plus event, it's like what an asset Oakland has in that community. It's an incredible asset. I look at this city like a business person, this is a strategic thing. It's like, what are our assets? How do we sell it? How do we get people here? How do we get revenue back? And it's like our LGBTQ plus community is a tremendous asset to this city. And we need to market it because we don't market it the way we should. And the other odd thing is I talked to someone today about arts and culture. And it's an interesting dilemma because whenever there's an economic collapse, arts and culture is always first on the chopping block, and it's devastating to Oaklanders because this is our thing here, right? I mean, this is at the center of the identity. This is part of our identity in Oakland. And so, but when you think about arts and culture, it's like how Oakland is just investing, like they just throw money everywhere, they invest in everything. But what is the strategy around arts and culture? How are we monetizing arts and culture? And I think that's critical in order to sell it to just because look, the mayor doesn't. We don't have a dictatorship. You've got to put together a budget and sell it internally to a number of people: the city administrator, the finance department. You can't have war inside. Everybody's got to be aligned, because you don't want people coming after you because they're mad or whatever. So when it comes to arts and culture, being able to develop a real strategy on how to monetize that and how to utilize it to bring revenue into the city, and what should we be really investing in on the arts and culture side, and how do we monetize it? And I was talking to someone else, like we could even connect arts and culture to violence prevention, because this lady was teaching a dance class and she's concerned about her future. And it's like, a centerpiece of violence prevention is getting underserved kids off the streets into activities, in-person activities. We have a lot of youth violence happening in Oakland, and I'm really concerned about younger and younger kids. And so I think that these nonprofit organizations are not back up and running in person the way they were before. I have talked to people, they used to coach games 3 days a week. They're not coaching any games now. So leveraging our funding streams and utilizing these different aspects of arts and culture to build to monetize it and then to sell it internally so that we can justify funding it, right? Instead of just arts and culture and everybody this and that, to really boil it down to a part of our core strategy to bring revenue into the city. I think it's critical. And I think Oakland doesn't have what San Francisco has, like a tourist industry, like how do we attract tourists to Oakland? What do we need to be working on for that? And that whole arts and culture fits into that too. So it comes back to your point about economic development, right? And it comes back to being very laser focused on what are we doing on the revenue side? How is it going to bring in money? And how do we market this city better so that we become the city that people want to go to for these different assets that we already actually have, right?
Absolutely, completely. We have to have you back.
Okay. Thank you,
For
Zinni. It's
yeah.
such a pleasure talking to you.
Oh yeah, and hey, thanks for watching and everything else. Hey, don't move a muscle, everybody. Tomorrow is Oscar Sunday. Do you like the Oscars, Suzanne?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You
Oh,
got your fancy tie out, Zinni? Are you going to dress up? You going black tie?
well, only if that's actually a good question. That only if I were going down the Beverly Hills. I did go to a couple Oscar parties here, but that was reserved for the 91 Stars Oscar party that was covering in Beverly Hills from 2010 to 2016, 17. Yeah. So, which you can actually see the videos from here in Zenny 62 on YouTube. But no, we have a new video. We have a new site, newish, OscarsMovieNews.com. Really proud of it. I'm on the Oscars press list, so we get all the latest information. So, hey, watch the Oscars and then OscarsMovieNews.com. But at any rate, Susan, stick around in the background. Everybody, see you Oscar Sunday. And hey, Susan, I've invited Susan to make her own vlog, so she's going to be showing us Oakland from her perspective. If that I think is really cool. And then maybe you can join Derek Sue and Fabian and Richard Hake, who's our Oakland vlogger. Well, technically Hayward, anyway. All right, folks, that ends this broadcast stream. Subscribe to Zenny62 on YouTube, and please like and share this one. And